Sometimes, life changes not with a loud crash, but with the quiet clatter of a coffee cup hitting the pavement. In that fleeting moment outside a roadside cafe, two broken worlds collided, one trying to escape his past, the other simply trying to survive one day at a time. The rain had stopped, but the clouds lingered like forgotten sorrow over the quiet, dusty road just outside a small-town cafe in Nebraska. Ellie Carter, a single mom in her early 30s, tightened her hoodie against the morning chill as she stepped out of her second-hand minivan, her 6-year-old daughter still asleep in the back seat. She had come for her usual cheap coffee, a blueberry muffin, and 5 minutes apiece before another shift at the local clinic. But fate had a different plan that morning. As she approached the cafe door, she nearly stumbled over something, or rather, someone. A man sat slumped on the curb, his army duffel beside him, boots muddy, jacket torn. His eyes, pale blue and tired, shot up the moment her shadow fell over him. But it wasn't just him. 6 children, all under the age of 10, huddled quietly behind him, eyes sunken, clothes wet, and hands clutched around each other as if they were afraid the wind would carry them away. He didn't ask for help. He didn't speak. But Ellie heard everything in the silence. "What happened to you?" she whispered, her voice part shock, part motherly instinct. The soldier just looked away, ashamed. One of the little girls sneezed, breaking the tension like shattering glass. Without a second thought, Ellie pulled out her car keys. "Get them inside. They're freezing." He hesitated. She didn't. Inside the cafe, the warmth returned color to their cheeks. Ellie ordered food for all of them with the little money she had left, watching as the kids devoured eggs and pancakes like they hadn't eaten in days. The soldier sat in the corner, eyes low, pride battling with gratitude. "My name's Ellie," she said softly, sliding him a cup of black coffee. He nodded. "Lucas, Sergeant Lucas Brennan." And just like that, something unspoken began. A woman who had nothing to give except her heart, and a man who had lost everything but his children. But could one small act of kindness really mend 6 little hearts and a soldier's shattered soul? You'll want to follow this journey, because what comes next will touch every corner of your heart. Red heart, if this story already has you hooked. Don't forget to like, drop a comment to share your thoughts, and hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what unfolds next in this emotional roller coaster of love, healing, and second chances. Sometimes the deepest bonds form not through grand gestures, but in quiet moments, like a warm towel handed to a child, a shared laugh over spilled juice, or the look in someone's eyes when they finally begin to trust again. The following days pass in a blur, not chaos, but of something gentle and unfamiliar. Ellie hadn't planned on bringing 7 strangers into her modest 2-bedroom home. Yet there they were, Lucas and his 6 kids, sleeping on mattresses pulled into her living room, eating breakfast at her kitchen counter, and brushing their teeth in shifts in the single bathroom. It wasn't much, but it was safe. The kids, shy at first, began to open up. Lacey, the eldest at 10, helped Ellie fold laundry without being asked. Caleb, the quiet middle child, started humming little tunes when he thought no one was listening. Even little Mia, just 3 years old, had stopped flinching in her sleep. And Lucas? He tried to stay out of the way. He offered to fix Ellie's broken fence, help clean out the garage, and quietly did the dishes every night after dinner, as if repaying her kindness with silence and service. But Ellie could see it. The haunted look in his eyes was beginning to fade. There were still moments he would drift off into memory, jaw tight, hands clenched, but when he was with the kids, his whole demeanor softened. One evening, after the kids had finally dozed off, Ellie stepped out onto the back porch. Lucas was already there, a blanket over his shoulders, staring into the horizon like he was waiting for something that might never come. "You don't have to be strong all the time, you know," she said gently, offering him a mug of tea. He looked at her, surprised. "I don't have a choice." Ellie sat beside him, letting the silence fill the space between their words. "I know that look. You've been fighting for too long. Maybe it's time to rest. Just a little." His eyes met hers, not with resistance, but with deep, aching vulnerability. No one had told him that in years. Maybe ever. That night, they didn't talk much. But something passed between them. quiet understanding, shared weariness, and the first fragile thread of connection woven not through obligation, but choice. The next morning, Ellie woke up to the smell of pancakes. Lucas stood in the kitchen, apron on, kids giggling, music playing softly on the old radio. The soldier was still there, but so was the father, and maybe, just maybe, the man. And Ellie? She smiled, realizing she wasn't just giving them a place to stay. She was letting them into her life. Every heart hides something, a pain too deep to share, a truth too heavy to carry. But sometimes, when trust begins to bloom, even the darkest secrets can't help but rise to the surface. It was a quiet Wednesday afternoon when the knock came. Ellie opened the door to find a tall woman in a crisp suit, a government badge clipped to her coat. Her voice was calm, rehearsed, almost too professional. "Ma'am, is Sergeant Lucas Brennan staying here?" Ellie's heart sank. Lucas was in the backyard, fixing a swing for the kids when she stepped outside, her voice low but trembling. "There's someone here asking for you." His face went pale. That same haunted look crept back in, fast and sharp, like a shadow returning to claim him. The woman introduced herself as Agent Moore from Veteran Affairs. She explained that Lucas had gone off the radar. Officially discharged, yes, but not fully cleared. His file was red-flagged. Not because he had done something wrong, but because he had walked away too soon from something terrible. Ellie stood frozen, listening from the hallway as Lucas finally spoke the words he had buried for years. "My last deployment was a routine," he said, his voice barely audible. "There was an ambush. We were escorting civilians. One of the enemy fighters. He was disguised as a medic. My team didn't see it in time. I lost my best friend in my arms." Agent Moore nodded gently, not interrupting. "I brought my team home. Every one of them. But I couldn't save his little boy. The father died screaming my name, and that scream still wakes me up at night." Ellie covered her mouth, tears rising without warning. She had always known Lucas was broken, but now she understood why he carried so much guilt, why he kept running. When the agent left, Lucas didn't come back inside. He stood in the yard, shoulders slumped, eyes locked on a cloudy sky. Ellie walked out and stood beside him, hands folded. "You save people," she whispered. "I didn't save enough. That doesn't make you a failure. That makes you human." He turned to look at her, not as a soldier or a guest, but as a man letting someone see him fully for the first time. "And your husband?" he asked quietly. "I've noticed a photo on the wall, but you never talk about him." Ellie hesitated. Then, with a deep breath, she told him. "He left when I was pregnant. Said he wasn't ready for a family. I've been doing this alone ever since." They were two souls who had both been abandoned, one by choice, the other by war. But somehow, in their brokenness, they were beginning to make something whole. That night, Lucas tucked his youngest into bed with a tenderness Ellie hadn't seen before. And Ellie? She sat on the couch, watching this man. Not just his pain, but the healing beginning to grow inside him. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. When two hearts begin to heal together, it's not always seamless. Sometimes love collides with fear, and the past claws its way back just as the future begins to look bright. It started with a phone call. Ellie had just finished putting together dinner. Homemade stew, cornbread, and a surprise chocolate pudding for the kids, when her phone buzzed with a number she didn't recognize. "Ms. Carter?" The voice on the other end asked. "I'm calling regarding custody procedures. We've received a report that your household is currently sheltering a former soldier and 6 minors not biologically related to you." Ellie's heart dropped. "Who reported this?" she asked, voice sharp. "I'm not at liberty to say, but you should know. If proper guardianship isn't established, these children could be placed into protective care. You'll be hearing from Child Services." The line went dead before she could respond. That night, her hands trembled as she cleared dishes. The kids were laughing in the other room, oblivious. Lucas was fixing the leaky bathroom faucet, humming to himself for the first time since he'd arrived. Ellie didn't know how to tell him, so she didn't. For days, tension simmered in her chest like a coiled spring. She started double-locking the front door, watching the street, sleeping lightly. Lucas noticed. "What's wrong?" he finally asked one night. You've been quiet. She shook her head. I'm fine. But he wasn't buying it. You think I can't see it? You look at me like I might vanish at any second. She didn't answer. He pressed again. Did I do something? That broke her. It's not about what you did. It's what's coming. Someone reported us. There's a chance they'll take the kids. And maybe even penalize me for helping. Lucas's face darkened. You should have told me. I didn't want to worry you. I didn't want to scare them. He stepped back, voice low. I never should have stayed. I never should have brought them here. I thought I could finally breathe, but I just put you and your daughter in danger. His words sliced deep. This isn't just your mess, Ellie snapped. I chose this. I let you in. I fed your kids. I washed their clothes. I love them like they're mine. Silence. The air thickened with pain, pride, and panic. Lucas turned away, his voice hollow. Then maybe it's time we go. The next morning, Ellie woke up early to make breakfast, only to find the living room empty. The blankets were folded. The duffel was gone. They had left without a word. Her daughter came in rubbing her eyes. Mommy, where'd the fun kids go? Ellie swallowed the lump in her throat. They just needed to go somewhere else for a while. She turned toward the kitchen, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Some goodbyes don't come with closure. And some conflicts aren't about anger, they're about fear. And Ellie? She had just realized she wasn't afraid for them anymore. She was afraid without them. Sometimes it's not the goodbye that hurts the most. It's the silence that follows. The quiet makes you question everything. Was it real? Did it matter? Or were you just a temporary stop on someone else's broken road? 3 days had passed since Lucas and the children left, and Ellie had barely spoken a full sentence. She still set 7 plates at the table by mistake. She still paused at bedtime, listening for laughter that no longer echoed in her halls. Her daughter, Emma, asked every night when the kids were coming back, and every time Ellie gave the same answer, soon, sweetheart, I hope. But in her heart, the hope was thinning. She had told herself not to get too attached. She had reminded herself, again and again, that they were temporary guests. Strangers once, survivors, but they had become more than that. They had become family. Still, that phone call had changed everything. She felt the walls close in, the fear, the pressure, the judgment. And when Lucas looked at her with that guilty, distant gaze, it felt like all the warmth they had built together was slipping away. Had she done the right thing? Had she helped? Or just delayed their next heartbreak? At work, she dropped a patient's chart. At the market, she forgot half her groceries. Even her neighbor asked, You okay, hon? You've been quiet lately. But Ellie didn't know how to say, I let a good man walk away because I was too afraid to fight. Meanwhile, miles away, Lucas stood in the back of an old roadside motel, watching his kids play quietly in a tiny, shared room. No kitchen, no backyard, just a cracked window, an old lamp, and a floor where 2 of them had to sleep every night. Lacey had stopped smiling. Caleb hadn't eaten much. Even Mia had started asking, Where's Miss Ellie? He told them they couldn't go back, that it wasn't safe. But deep inside, Lucas knew the truth. They had been safe in that little house. He had been safe not from danger, but from the weight he carried. From the moment Ellie looked at him outside that cafe, she hadn't seen a broken soldier. She'd seen a father trying, a man who wanted to be better. And he was better with her, but now he was drowning again. And he didn't even know how to reach back. That night, Lucas sat with his phone in hand, her number pulled up, his thumb hovering over the call button. Back in her house, Ellie sat on the couch holding a drawing Emma had made. It was stick figures, her, Ellie, and the 6 other kids. With Lucas, they had all been drawn with smiling faces. And above them, in crayon, were the words, Our family. Tears spilled silently down Ellie's cheeks. They both sat in different places. Same silence, same ache, same question. Did we just lose something we were finally meant to have? Sometimes, when you think all is lost, life whispers a gentle reminder. Love doesn't vanish in silence. It waits, quietly, until the right moment to return, even if just through a knock at the door. It was nearly midnight when Ellie heard the knock. 3 soft taps. Then silence. She sat up straight on the couch, her heart hammering so loud it echoed in her ears. For a moment, she thought she imagined it. But then there was again 1 knock. 2. 3. She rose slowly, clutching the blanket around her, bare feet padding across the hardwood floor. She peeked through the peephole, and there he was, Lucas, soaked in rain, his duffel hanging off one shoulder. And behind him, 6 sleepy, wide-eyed children, bundled in jackets and pajamas, holding hands like they were afraid to blink and lose this moment. Ellie opened the door, barely able to breathe. Her voice came out in a whisper. "What are you doing here?" Lucas looked up at her, his eyes raw, like he hadn't slept in days. "I tried to keep them away," he said quietly. "I thought it was the right thing to do. But they cried for you every night, and I did too." She stepped aside, wordlessly, and they walked in, all of them. One by one, the kids ran into the living room, familiar and safe. Mia immediately curled up on the couch. Lacey wrapped her arms around Ellie, without a word. Lucas remained at the doorway. "I should have fought harder," he said, still not stepping in. "I let fear win. I didn't want you to get hurt, so I left. But the truth is, the moment we walked out that door, we stopped living. We were surviving again, not living, not loving." Ellie's eyes welled with tears. "You're not the only one who was scared." "I know." A long pause. Then finally he stepped inside. The room was filled with quiet, tender sounds. A child sigh, the ticking clock, the rain tapping the windows. But the silence no longer felt heavy. It felt sacred. Lucas moved closer, still unsure. "If it's too late, I'll go. But if there's even a small chance." Ellie reached for his hand. "You're home," she whispered. "You always were." In that moment, no words were needed. The tension melted, the pain softened, and something deeper replaced it, something gentle, whole, and undeniably real. Later that night, Ellie tucked the kids in with her daughter. Lucas sat on the porch, staring out at the dark sky. Ellie joined him, handed him a cup of tea, just like before. "What now?" he asked softly. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Now," she said, "we stop running, and we start building something new." There comes a moment when words aren't just words. They become vows, forged in quiet nights and aching hearts. And in that moment, love isn't just a feeling, it becomes a choice. The next morning felt different. Not rushed, not strained, just peaceful. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows, golden and warm. The smell of pancakes lingered in the air. Children's laughter trickled in from the backyard, where they played in the grass with Emma, chasing a ball Lucas had patched up with duct tape. Ellie watched it all from the kitchen table, steaming mug in hand, heart full, eyes misty. Lucas entered quietly, wiping his hands on a towel. "The swing set's fixed," he said with a smile. "Used half your toolbox, but it won't collapse this time." She smiled. "You say that like it's a bad thing." He hesitated. His smile faded, not from fear, but from the weight of something unspoken. "Ellie," he said softly, "can we talk?" She nodded. They stepped outside to the porch, the soft hum of bees in the garden filling the silence. Lucas leaned on the railing, staring out. "I've been a soldier longer than I've been a man. For years, all I knew was survival, protecting others, following orders, staying numb. But being here with you, with the kids, something inside me started to change." She waited, patient. "I've never been more scared than I was the day I walked away from this house. And I've never felt more alive than when I came back." He turned to her. "I don't know what the future looks like. I can't promise I won't make mistakes. But I can promise this. I'll never walk away from you again. Not from you, not from them." Ellie's eyes filled again, the words catching in her throat. Lucas reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something small, a simple, worn military dog tag. The back scratched and faded. He placed it in her hand. "It was my father's," he said. "I've carried it into every deployment. It's seen fire, loss, and now healing. I want you to have it. Not because I'm leaving again, but because I'm finally staying." Ellie closed her hand around it, tears falling freely. I don't need grand gestures, she whispered. I don't need rings or promises etched in gold. I just need you here with us, choosing this life every single day. I already am, he said. They stood there, the sun rising behind them, hands clasped, hearts steady. Inside, the kids yelled from the yard. Mom, Lucas, we need help with the kite. She laughed. Duty calls. He smiled, kissing the back of her hand. Let's go. As they walked down the steps together, side by side, Ellie glanced down at the tag in her hand, now warm from her palm, and she realized sometimes love isn't sealed with diamonds. Sometimes it's sealed with steel and a promise that means everything. True happiness rarely knocks politely. It crashes in, dressed in chaos and laughter, showing up when you least expect it, reminding you that sometimes the best moments are the ones no one plans. The wind tugged at the kite as Lucas ran across the backyard, trailing behind Caleb and Emma, both shrieking with laughter. The kite, shaped like a dragon, soared higher than expected, twisting with the wind like a living thing. Ellie stood on the porch, arms crossed, a smile tugging at her lips. She hadn't heard this much laughter in years. Inside, the kitchen was a mess. Pancake bat on the counter, tiny mismatched socks under the table, crayon drawings scattered like confetti. But the mess didn't bother her. This was joy. Real messy, untamed joy. Later that afternoon, the family bundled into her van and drove to the local park. Lucas had promised the kids ice cream. Ellie had promised herself she wouldn't cry in public if this happiness got too overwhelming. At the park, Mia offered Ellie a sticky, half-melted cone with a proud grin. This one's for you, she announced. Ellie knelt to accept it. Thank you, baby. Lacey, standing nearby with her arms folded in that protective big sister way, glanced at Lucas and said, So, is she like our mom now? Lucas froze. The question had landed like a firework, sudden, bright, impossible to ignore. He looked at Ellie, searching her face. But she was already looking at him. Her expression not shocked, not uncertain, just open. You don't have to call me anything you don't want, Ellie said gently. But I'll always be here for you. That's a promise. Lacey nodded, quietly. Okay. And just like that, it was decided. Later that evening, after baths and stories and one very chaotic round of pillow fighting, Ellie tucked her daughter and the other children into their little makeshift beds. When she returned to the living room, she found Lucas standing by the window, hands in his pockets, a strange look on his face. She walked over. What's wrong? He turned to her, then held up a folded envelope. What's this? She asked. I applied for housing assistance, legal custody papers, counseling. I talked to a lawyer. I didn't want to say anything until it was real. But I'm doing it. I'm making this official. I want to give them a real home, and I want you to be part of it. Ellie opened the envelope and scanned the papers inside. Everything from applications to a handwritten note at the bottom that read, A new start for us all. She looked up at him, eyes wide with disbelief and joy. I didn't think I could have this, she whispered. A home, a family, you. He pulled her into his arms. You gave us a second chance, Ellie. I just want to spend the rest of my life proving you were right to take it. And right there, in a messy living room filled with toys, laundry, and love, Ellie Carter, the single mom who once just wanted peace and coffee, realized that joy doesn't come quietly. It roars in, with 6 kids, a stubborn soldier, and a future brighter than she ever dared dream. Love is easy in the sunlight, when laughter flows and hearts are full. But real love? It's tested in the shadows, when jobs are lost, kids fall ill, and doubts creep in where certainty once lived. Underscore. Weeks turned into months. The once temporary family had settled into something deeper, something that felt unshakable. Mornings started with sleepy hugs and cereal crumbs. Evenings were full of storybooks, scraped knees, and bath time arguments. And between it all, Ellie and Lucas, finding their rhythm not just as caregivers, but as partners. But time doesn't pass without trial. It began subtly. Lucas's knee, the one he'd injured overseas, started acting up again. At first, he brushed it off. A limp here, a wince there, but then the swelling came. Then the pain. Eventually, it was bad enough that he couldn't keep up with the warehouse job he'd picked up to support the household. One late afternoon, Ellie found him sitting alone on the porch, his leg propped up, eyes fixed on the distant trees. "I can't work," he said, before she even asked. "They let me go today." She sat beside him. "You don't have to carry all of this on your own." He shook his head. "That's the thing. I do. I said I'd provide. I made a promise. And you're here. You love them. That's more than any paycheck." But he didn't answer. He just stared out, jaw clenched. Meanwhile, the stress began to seep into the house. The groceries didn't stretch as far. Emma needed new shoes. Caleb came home with a note from school about needing a medical checkup. Bills started stacking in uneven piles. And still, Ellie worked double shifts. Lucas limped through physical therapy, and kids, they noticed. One night, Ellie overheard Lacey whispering to the younger kids, "Be quiet, okay? They're already worried. We don't need to make it worse." That broke Ellie's heart. She and Lucas started arguing. Not big fights, just sharp words, tired glances, unspoken frustration that clung to the walls. There were nights they barely spoke. Nights she cried in the laundry room so no one would hear. One especially hard night, Lucas lost his temper when Mia spilled milk on the rent check. He shouted. She cried. The room went cold. Later, Ellie found him outside in the dark, head in his hands. "I promised I'd be better," he whispered. "And I'm failing." She knelt beside him, placed a hand on his chest. "You're not failing," she said. "You're just human, and humans break sometimes. That's why we hold each other up." He didn't respond right away. But then, slowly, he nodded. In that quiet, they remembered something important. This wasn't about perfect days. It was about enduring together. When things got hard, messy, painful. Because real family isn't just made in moments of joy. It's forged in fire. And the test of time? They were passing it, not perfectly, but side by side. Healing doesn't always come with a grand sunrise. Sometimes it begins in the smallest moment, when a door opens, a hand reaches out, and hope quietly walks back in. Spring came like a sigh of relief. The snow melted, the grass returned, and with it, the heaviness that had hung in Ellie's house for months began to lift. Not all at once, but gently, like someone had cracked open a window and let the light find its way back in. Lucas's physical therapy had started working. He still limped, but the pain no longer stole his sleep. With help from the local Veterans Outreach Center, he was offered a part-time position mentoring returning soldiers, not just a paycheck, but a purpose. Ellie smiled when he came home from his first day, not because of the money, but because of the way he stood a little taller again. The kids were doing better too. Emma had made a new best friend at school. Lacey started writing stories in a journal Ellie had given her. Caleb proudly brought home a perfect spelling test. Even the smallest moments felt like victories. One sunny Saturday, Ellie and Lucas loaded everyone into a van and drove to the edge of town. They parked outside a worn-down house with peeling paint, overgrown grass, and a crooked mailbox. The kids looked confused. Lucas turned to them and said, This might be our new home." They all blinked in unison. "It's a fixer-upper," Ellie said, laughing, "but it has 5 bedrooms, a big yard, a porch swing, and a treehouse," Lucas added, pointing toward a rickety wooden platform in the tree out back. The kids cheered. That afternoon, they walked room to room. It smelled like dust and old wallpaper, but to Ellie, it smelled like possibility. The kitchen would need new tiles. The walls would need paint. The backyard, well, that might take all summer. But it was theirs. They signed the papers a week later, with shaking hands and full hearts. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Cleaning, painting, arguing over wall colors, letting the kids pick their own rooms. They celebrated with pizza, On the living room floor the night they finally moved in. No furniture, no curtains, just laughter, bare walls, and hearts finally at peace. That night, after the kids had fallen asleep in sleeping bags, Lucas stood beside Ellie in the hallway. He held her hand, squeezed it gently. "You sure about this?" he asked. She smiled. "I've never been more sure." They kissed softly, not with urgency, but with quiet certainty. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of something new, not a fairy tale, not perfect, but theirs. A soldier and a single mom, 6 children, 1 home, and a future filled with love, built brick by brick, moment by moment, together. Love isn't proven by how much we give on easy days. It's revealed when everything is at risk, and the only way to protect the ones we cherish is to let go of what we want most. It happened on a Tuesday. Ellie was folding laundry while the kids played in the yard when the doorbell rang. She opened it to find a stern-looking man in a black jacket standing beside a young woman in a blazer holding a clipboard. "Mr. Brennan?" The man asked as Lucas appeared behind her. Lucas stepped forward. "That's me." The woman flipped through a folder. "We're here on behalf of the Department of Veteran Affairs and Family Services. There's been a pending appeal regarding custody rights for your children, initiated by your late wife's estranged parents." Lucas froze. "They've filed for guardianship under the grounds of blood relation and financial stability," she continued. "The court date is set for next month." The words felt like ice. After everything they'd survived, the war, the poverty, the pain, the rebuilding. Now, someone want to take them away? The moment the door shut, Lucas paced the floor, his breath short, fists clenched. "I don't have a lawyer. I don't have money to fight this. They're rich, connected. I can't win this in court." Ellie stood silently, then placed a hand on his arm. "You're not alone. We'll find help. We'll figure it out." But Lucas shook his head, pain flooding his expression. "They're after me, not you. If I fight them, I might lose. But if I step aside, maybe they won't come for the kids as long as they're here with you." Ellie's eyes widened. "You can't mean that." "I can," he whispered, "and I do." The next morning, Lucas was gone. No note, no goodbye, just his duffel missing from the hallway closet, and a letter left in Ellie's name, folded beside the coffee pot. "Ellie, this isn't goodbye. It's protection. You gave my children a home. You gave me a home. But I can't risk losing them to a courtroom I can't beat. If I disappear, they might drop the case. And if they don't, they'll never find me. But they'll see you're stable, that you love them, that you're safe. I'd rather vanish and know they're okay than stay and risk having them torn from the only peace they've ever known. Please don't hate me. Tell them I love them. Always. Lucas." Ellie dropped to the floor as the words blurred through her tears. The children didn't understand. Lacey shut down completely. Caleb asked where he went every night. Mia cried herself to sleep calling for him. But Ellie, strong, heartbroken, and determined, fought back. She contacted lawyers, appealed to social services, provided documentation, gave testimony of their life together, not just as caretakers, but as family, and slowly, painfully, she began to build a case, not to replace Lucas, but to honor what he'd done for them, what he'd given up to keep them safe. Love, she realized, isn't always about staying. Sometimes it's about stepping away, so the people you love can keep standing. Some stories don't end with fireworks or farewells. They end with quiet breath, a long-awaited return, and the feeling that everything finally found its rightful place. 3 months passed. Ellie stood outside the courthouse, fingers trembling as she held the final custody letter in her hand. The fight had been long, exhausting in ways she hadn't imagined, but she had done it. The judge had ruled in her favor. The children were officially under her guardianship. No one had come to claim them, not the grandparents, not the lawyers, and certainly not Lucas. Not yet. The days following the ruling were strange, filled with quiet joy but also a hollow ache. Everyone reminded her of who wasn't there. The kids laughed, played, slowly returned to themselves. But even they couldn't shake the question no one dared ask out loud. Would he ever come back? Then one evening, as golden light filtered through the kitchen windows, Mia dropped her crayon and suddenly pointed outside. Look, look, Mommy, it's him. Ellie froze. She turned slowly toward the window, heart racing. There, just beyond a garden gate, with overgrown stubble and worn boots caked in dust, stood Lucas. He looked thinner, older, but his eyes, when they locked with Ellie's, were still his. She walked outside, every step filled with the kind of disbelief usually reserved for dreams. He didn't say anything right away. Neither did she. Then finally she whispered, "Why now?" Lucas looked down, then back up. "I watched from a distance," he said. "I needed to be sure that they were okay, that you were okay, and you were more than okay. You saved them." "I didn't save them alone," she said quietly. "I never should have left." "No," she replied, shaking her head softly. "You shouldn't have, but you did it for them, and they felt that even in the silence." He looked toward the house, where 6 faces now pressed eagerly against the windows, and one little girl was already running across the lawn toward him. "Daddy!" Mia cried. Lucas knelt down, arms open, tears already slipping down his face. They ran to him, all of them, one by one, arms wrapped tight, smiles through tears. A family that had been bruised by absence, but never broken by it. Ellie walked over, joining the circle, and Lucas looked up at her with the softest, most grateful eyes she'd ever seen. "I don't have anything left to give," he whispered. "Except me?" She reached down, took his hand, and pulled him up. "Then come home," she said. And this time, he did. That night, the house glowed brighter than ever. The kids danced in the living room. Music played from the radio. Dinner was loud and messy and perfect. Later, after the dishes were cleared and the stars took their places overhead, Ellie and Lucas stood on the back porch, hand in hand, watching their family inside. "We're not perfect," he murmured. "No," she agreed. "We're something better." A symphony had been written from chaos. Every note, from pain to joy, had found its place, and finally, everything was in harmony.